Hello everyone, today you will hear an interesting story. Dasha came home from work and tiredly began to pack her bags. Her husband, Ellery, frowned. He knew that it did not bode well. Tomorrow is the first of the month on the calendar, which means that his wife is leaving again for another day or two on another business trip. These absences have occurred strictly at the beginning of each month for 5 years. The man was already tired of jealousy. He did not believe his wife. He could not ask the woman at work because she worked as a freelancer and earned her own money while sitting at home on her computer. He met Dosha 7 years ago. She came to the graduation of his class. Her younger sister was studying there. The girl herself was almost 30 years old at that moment. Valera immediately fell in love, like a boy with this mature woman. He was fascinated by her gorgeous hair, her sweet smile, and her eyes. They were bottomless. It is clear that Valera's relatives were not happy about such a connection. The girl was older than the young man by as much as 8 years. But despite the gossip, their wedding took place. And for 5 years, the spouses enjoyed their marital happiness, which was only overshadowed by Doria's constant trips. This time, a man who suspected his wife of cheating finally decided to put a point in this story. He hired a detective to follow his wife. The wait was endless. Valerie could not find peace until the detective called on his cell phone. He said that he had managed to find out something, but that it was necessary to meet at a nearby cafe. He said the conversation was not a phone call. When the detective approached, Valerie had already finished his second coffee. He was noticeably nervous, but the detective quickly reassured him by saying that Dosha would not cheat on him. But she does not go on business trips. Here the husband tensed. He expected that now the detective would say something awful. The detective said that every month in the early days of his wife visits the grave of his first husband. He died a long time ago, was in a car accident almost immediately after their wedding. The orphan boy had no relatives, no one took care of his grave. So Dosha took on the mission. She came, pulled weeds, planted flowers, brought wreaths. Ding. Valera wandered to the entrance of the house. He's here, near the front door. He bumped into Dosha, who was getting out of a cab. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" The man asked her this question with such bitterness and resentment that his wife immediately understood what he meant. The girl explained that she did not talk about her first marriage and the death of her spouse because it was a great loss to her. She still could not get over the grief. The woman was afraid that Valerie would simply not understand her and would be jealous of her late husband. The man hugged Dosha and said, "Honey, I understand you. Promise me there will be no more secrets." Dosha smiled and replied, "Oh, and I already have one. I'm expecting a baby." Valera just jumped with happiness. Story 2. The story of how the husband, sensing something wrong, decided to follow his wife. Anton was bored in his marriage. Yes, his wife seemed nice, young, and beautiful, but family life was not at all what Anton had dreamed of. He wanted passion, adventure like in Hollywood movies. might be almost omnipotent, and she listens to him in everything. A step without him cannot step out. But in fact, Nika was quite independent, even too much. Up from nothing to do, Anton decided to play spy. Modern technology came to his aid. He's spending half his salary on a clever device. He could listen to all phone calls of his wife. And Nika talked on the phone long and often. Just with her mother, with girlfriends, with colleagues at work, with a neighbor even. Very quickly, the man got tired of listening to her chatter. Especially since there was nothing of interest to him there. Anton thought that enough was enough. But he decided to listen one last time and grabbed a very interesting part of the conversation. "That's of course, dear," answered a pleasant man's voice to his wife. "Then see you later," Nika softly murmured. She had never spoken to Anton in that tone before. And for the first time in her life, the man was jealous. When Nika left the apartment that day, he decided to follow her. What he saw shocked Anton. His Nika had met a young man in a cafe. He wasn't prettier than Anton, but he was very different from him. For example, Anton had never understood why it was necessary to pull back a chair for a woman to sit down. He never gave Nika flowers. Why waste money on a broom? And the stranger gave the girl a gorgeous bouquet. Watching Nika smile at her companion, it can experience such a fit of anger that it seemed enough to kill him. But he forced himself to leave the cafe. Back home, he began to wait for Nika. She didn't come back too late. As usual, she threw her keys in the candy vase. She took off her coat. This evening was no different from their usual family boring. Thus only she seemed to be bored only at home. And on the side is not bad so much fun. At this point, Anton could not help himself. He questioned Nika thoroughly. The girl denied everything at first, but then she confessed. Yes, she had another man. Forgive me, Anton. I should have told you right away. We're not a couple. We're too different. I thought we'd fall in love, but it didn't work out. Then why did you get married? Anton asked her almost calmly. Nika didn't say anything. She would have told him that all her friends were getting married, and that her parents were sad at home, that her daughter was not settled, that every holiday, every Christmas and New Year was not without sympathetic looks from relatives. So Nika broke down. As Anton proposed, she immediately said yes, and then roared all night. But she knew that such frankness would only hurt her husband more. "I'm going," she said. She put on her coat. The keys were still in the vase. "Forgive me if you can, and be happy." Story 3. I decided to follow my wife and found out that she kept cheating on me. I met my future wife and Tatasha on a dating site. First we corresponded, then we called, then we met, the standard scheme like everyone else. She was 19, I was 22. We liked each other, and soon by mutual agreement we removed our profiles from the dating site and started dating. I never particularly believed in some mythical love. I thought that I would marry unless, on the fly or at the age of 30, when unmarried to stay will be indecent. But Katya was literally for me a light in the window, even confess shameful. We were not bored together. I felt my responsibility to her, and it did not scare me at all. Our relationship quickly evolved. It turned out that I was her first boyfriend, and naturally, 6 months after we met, I proposed. I did it beautifully, since she became my girlfriend. I had an incentive to earn more money to give her nice gifts, and I bought the best ring and a magnificent bouquet. Katya agreed. At first, when we first got married, my friends laughed at me, did not believe that I would last long, but after 6 months they stopped, realized that I was serious with her. I had an apartment from my grandmother. My parents rented it out before we got married. Then they asked the tenants to move out, and Katya and I started living there. Of course, everyday life was not ideal. Neither me nor my wife knew how to cook, cleaned too poorly, but neither me nor Katya. This particularly did not scare. For a long time, it seemed to me that my life with her was like an American movie. We were so young, beautiful, free, stylish. We lived as we liked and loved each other. By the time the problems between us started, we had been together for 3 years. I was beginning to think it was time for us to think about having a baby. Like with Katya, I quit my job and got a shift job so I could work in the capital for 2 weeks and moonlight at home for 2 weeks. At first, we enjoyed every meeting. I worked. I came, and Katya met me. The men I worked with in the capital still snickered, saying that you could only fall in love like that when you were young. One day, Esther is Bachel's Durian Tipo Assis, decided to surprise my wife, told her I had to stay for a couple of days, but I myself arrived on time. I hoped to show up beautifully, that she would come home in the evening and there would be me. Roses, a romantic dinner, and diamond earrings, for which I had been saving for months. However, Katya was not happy with me. At least in the evening, when I was already waiting for her at home, she came back not alone, but with her boyfriend, and they were so obviously together. My wife's lover I wanted to throw down the stairs, but did not have time to, and the guy ran fast. Katya refused to even listen to my reproaches. "Don't tell me you've never had a change," she brushed it off. It turned out that my wife had a whole theory about married life. Katya was sincerely convinced that married life without cheating does not exist, and in general, she has every right to try something new because I had partners before marriage. And she did not. What happened to me at the time? I won't even say clearly. I went to my parents. I just couldn't see her. I only remember that I told her to go to her lovers. Exing, I left for the capital, thinking that maybe at work, away from her, it would be easier, but it did not help. Not that I was also right, but I always thought that women suffer infidelity more than men, and even if something happened. I thought about how it would hurt Kate if she knew. But for her it was so simple and mundane, like brushing teeth. When I got back from my shift, she came to meet me at the train station, wearing a beautiful dress and those earrings. She hugged me, told me she was a fool and I was the best, asked me to forgive her, promised me we would have a baby and everything would work out. Of course, I forgave her. Everything was going very well with us for 6 months, and then when I came home from work again, I found out from a friend that Katya was getting regular rides from some guy. Decided to follow my wife, and indeed I found out that she continues to cheat on me. This time, I did not immediately arrange a scandal. I decided that I will take a break while I will be at work, and when I get there, we'll talk. However, everything turned out very differently. The pandemic struck. I had to stay home. I just couldn't work up the courage to talk to Katya. Afraid of hearing that she was leaving me for someone else, or that she wanted to continue living the same life. Apparently, I dragged it out for too long. In May, I found out she was pregnant. Our parents are just happy. Katya is shining like the sun. I have to admit to myself that I'm not going to divorce her anyway. I already love this baby and think it's mine, even though I'm not sure I'm the biological father.